Morning, English 9 students. This is Mr. Burke here. I've also got my, sidekick Crosby sitting on the chair. So he's going to be hanging out with me today as I talk to you about characterization. Characterization is a big part of writing good stories, and as a reader, I'm thinking about characterization really gives you a better understanding of the story and of characters. So this week we're going to read a short story called The Necklace, and in this story, if we can focus on how each character is being created, it'll help us understand why they act the way they act. So what words do you think of when you hear the word characterization? Right, the root word in here is the word character. So you can see, or you can anticipate, that this is a literary term, is going to be centered around the idea of the character in the story. So as we look through this and you're taking notes, we're going to start by defining characterization. Characterization is a literary device that is used to step by step inside of literature highlight and explain details about a character in a story. Okay, what does that mean? Well, characterization includes things like the character's behavior, their thought processes, motivations. How is a character motivated to act specific ways in a story? What they think, and ideas that they have. If you're paying attention to how characters are created, you'll understand the story and how the story changes because of that specific character and how they act. So that's what you want to kind of get to through this discussion. What is the function of it? It helps us understand any character. It helps us understand how the characters act in their thought process. And good characterization helps the readers understand the story better because we can anticipate why the characters act a certain way. And sometimes we can anticipate how they might act in a situation if we know a lot about them. So you can see this little picture here. This is from the movie Robin Hood, the Disney animated movie Robin Hood. And each character is created a different way, and they all have a part in the story's plot. So first, there are primary characters. Primary characters are obviously the characters that the author spends the most time talking about. You're going to know the most about primary characters. There's the protagonist. Sometimes there's more than one, but that's the main character. Okay, the plot goes around what the main character does, right? That's Link if you play video games. This is Link from the video game Zelda, right? And so he is the protagonist. He's the hero. There's also other kinds of protagonists that aren't a hero, but Link would be a hero in the video game Zelda. There's antagonist characters. That's the bad guy. It's usually the person that's opposite of the conflict for the protagonist. There isn't always a protagonist or an antagonist, but usually if there's a conflict between two people, one of them is a protagonist and one of them is an antagonist. Next, you have round characters. And think of this as round characters are like a ball, right? They're well developed. They're round. You know about them. You know a lot of details. The way that you learn that is they share their thoughts in the story. You see their conversations with other characters. They share what they think and feel as characters, so you know a lot about them. These are the characters you'll be able to anticipate their actions. Or when they do things, you'll understand why, because you heard them talk about who they are and you know a lot about them. Then you have dynamic characters. Okay? Dynamic characters are often round because you have to see who they are in deeper ways, and they change throughout the story. Right? So just because they start the story in one place mentally, like who they are as a person, and by the end of the story, it's different. Okay? So if you think of any movie, any protagonist, any heavily focused on character will often undergo some sort of change, and that would make that character dynamic. Now let's talk about secondary characters. So secondary characters are often less focused on characters. They are needed in a story to help make the plot go, but they aren't as focused on by the author. So you're not always going to know in a lot of detail about who these characters are. Okay, one way of classifying a secondary character is a flat character. And this is, if you think about round characters as a ball, think about flat characters as a circle. They're very surface level characters. They don't have very many personality traits that are explained by the author. You basically they're there to help different things in the story go. Then there's static characters. Static characters can be round characters and you know a lot about them, but they don't change through the story. So most of the time they're not very round characters. They're there to serve a function and they act the same every time. So you can predict a lot of the actions of a static character because they just are what they are. Then there's stock characters. That's a specific type of flat character that's instantly recognized by readers. And if you look over here in this little window, I've highlighted some typical stock characters that you see in any kind of literature or movie or video game, right? A villain, right? They're just bad. It doesn't go into a ton of depth about why they're bad, but they are, right? Heroes or heroines are stock characters that are typically flat. If they're a hero in the story and they're well developed, then that means that they're a protagonist and a round character. But think about like if you're watching a Marvel movie and like Captain America the movie. If Spider-Man makes an entrance, he's also a hero, but he's not going to be well developed in that story. He's got his own story, but in the Captain America movies, he just is who he is. And so there's many different kinds of them: the sidekick, the fool, the helpless female or damsel in distress, the love interests, people that are traitors. All of those are typical characters that we see over and over in different types of stories that we recognize. So these are kind of the main ways to look at characterization. What I'm going to do now is give you a couple so you can practice trying to identify. So think, who's this character? Right? If you've ever seen Star Wars, this is Luke Skywalker. Right? And so what you would do is classify him. Is he a static character? No. Is he a round character? Yes, because he's young as the Star Wars movie starts, and he undergoes significant change through the whole Star Wars saga, starting from a young man and ending now as an old man. If you've watched all the videos or all the movies and you've seen the way that he thinks changes. He becomes a Jedi, he fights Darth Vader, he has moments of weakness, he's a very well-developed character. He's the central character to the whole Skywalker saga of Star Wars. Let's look at this guy. I'll give you a hint. It's from the movie Coco. If you've never seen it, you should watch it. It's great. But if you have seen it, you know this is Hector Rivera. He's from the movie Coco. He's a stock character. He is a sidekick. And he helps the main part of the movie go. Now, you could have a debate. Is he a flat character, a round character? How much do you know about him? Because he's involved in a lot of the story. And you could discuss whether or not he undergoes a significant change, which would make him dynamic or static. But he's a stock character because he's a sidekick. So you may know a lot about him, but he's also a typical sidekick in the stories. Next one is Haymitch. This is Haymitch from the Hunger Games series. And you have to classify him, right? Does he undergo significant change? If you just take on the first movie itself, the first one, Catching Fire, he doesn't undergo any change. So that would make him a static character. If you looked over the long haul, you learn more about Haymitch, and he becomes round and rounder as the trilogy or whatever goes through. So that's the kind of thing that you're thinking about in terms of characterization. Is he a sidekick? Maybe, maybe not. He would be, maybe if you look back at stock characters, the voice of reason or wisdom. Right? He's giving advice often to the characters to help them get through their part of the story. What about this? Perry the Platypus from Phineas and Ferb. If you've never seen that show, it's a cartoon on Disney Channel, but Phineas and Ferb, Perry the Platypus, always does the same thing. Right? So he's a secondary character. He's not part of the main plot, although sometimes he influences the plot of the show. But he would be a static character because he doesn't change. And he's pretty flat. He's not very well developed. He doesn't talk. Okay, sometimes they have him do stuff, but overall, he's flat and static, and he helps make the story go, but not as much as, let's say, Phineas or Ferb. So that would make him more of a flat character. So there you go. We learned about the different types of characterization, why it's important. We learned about the different types of characters. You're going to be asked to identify characters in a story and classify them based on what kinds of characters they are. And just remember, the more we learn about a character, it highlights and explains details about them that help us understand why they act the way they do. So that's characterization.